In the quiet fringes of Alaska's vast wilderness, nestled between snow-blanketed pines and icy streams, lived a golden retriever named Miska. Miska wasn't just any dog. She was a retired search and rescue dog, known in her younger years for her uncanny instincts and undying loyalty. After a decade of service, she was adopted by a park ranger named Eli and taken to his modest log cabin tucked deep in the woods. One crisp morning in early spring, as the snow began to melt and the forest stirred with new life, Miska's ears perked up. A faint whimper echoed from the edge of the trees near the cabin. Alert and cautious, she trotted toward the sound, her paws barely making a sound on the damp earth. Beneath a fallen log, trembling and barely visible against the underbrush, were two tiny bear cubs, no older than a few weeks. Their fur was matted, and they cried softly, clearly cold, hungry, and alone. Eli was cautious when Miska led him to the cubs. It wasn't common nor wise to interfere with wild bears. But after watching the area for hours and seeing no sign of a mother, Eli called the local wildlife authorities. With their permission and assistance, he brought the cubs to the cabin, temporarily caring for them until a wildlife rehabilitation center could be reached. During that time, something extraordinary happened. Miska took to the cubs as if they were her own. She curled around them for warmth, groomed their fur with gentle licks, and responded to their cries with soft whines and nudges. The cubs, in turn, nestled against her, nibbled her ears playfully, and followed her every step with clumsy adoration. It was a sight Eli would never forget, a loyal golden retriever mothering two orphan bear cubs. What was supposed to be a few days turned into weeks. The rehab center was overwhelmed, and the cubs were thriving under Miska's care. Wildlife officials, after observing the situation and consulting with biologists, allowed the unusual fostering to continue under close supervision. Eli's cabin transformed into a haven, a place where the lines between wild and domestic blurred in the most heartwarming way. The cubs, named Tundra and Echo, grew rapidly under Miska's watchful eye. She taught them how to play, how to sniff out food, and even how to be cautious of certain dangers. Eli often marveled at her patience, her intelligence, and the gentle authority she had over them. For over a year, the makeshift family thrived. Then the inevitable came. The cubs had to return to the wild. It was a painful farewell. Miska whimpered and searched for them long after they were released into a protected reserve miles away. Tundra and Echo looked back one last time before lumbering into the forest, guided by instinct in the call of the wild. Eli held Miska close that evening as she stared out the window for hours. Years passed. Miska grew older, her muzzle graying and her steps slower. But she never stopped gazing into the woods, ears flicking at every rustle, nose twitching at every unfamiliar scent. Eli knew she remembered. Then one autumn day, everything changed. Eli and Miska were on their routine morning walk along the ridge near the cabin. The air was crisp, and the leaves painted the ground in fiery hues of red and gold. Miska paused suddenly, her body rigid, nose high in the air. Eli watched as she darted ahead with a surprising burst of energy. He followed quickly, heart pounding. He reached the clearing and froze. Standing at the edge of the trees were two massive grizzlies. They were fully grown now, their thick coats gleaming, their bodies towering and powerful. But they stood still, eyes focused not on Eli, but on Miska. And then, as if time folded in on itself, the bears let out a low, familiar chuff. Miska barked once, then twice, tail wagging furiously. She approached without fear, and the bears responded, lowering their heads, emitting soft huffs of recognition. Echo stepped forward, sniffing Miska's face, then nudged her with a massive paw. Tundra rumbled a deep, guttural sound that to Eli sounded almost like a laugh. It was them. The reunion was unlike anything Eli, or the millions who would later see the footage, had ever witnessed. Miska licked their muzzles, and the bears, in a surprising show of gentleness, pressed their foreheads to her side. It was a moment that transcended species, that spoke of a bond deeper than instinct. Eli, stunned, took out his phone and recorded as the three old companions shared a moment that seemed touched by magic. The video, uploaded later that evening, spread across the internet like wildfire. People all over the world wept at the sight of a dog reuniting with the wild animals she once called her own. The story didn't end there. Over the following months, Tundra and Echo returned to the ridge regularly. They never came too close to the cabin, respecting the boundary of their former home, but always near enough that Miska could greet them. Sometimes, she'd disappear for hours, returning with burrs in her coat and a sparkle in her eyes. Even in her final days, Miska remained alert, ears ever tuned to the forest. She passed peacefully one winter morning, curled up in her favorite spot by the fire, a soft smile on her face. Eli buried her beneath the old oak tree where the cubs were first found, a place that had changed all their lives forever. Weeks later, Eli found something remarkable at Miska's grave. Two large stones carefully placed on either side of the headstone, and a collection of pine branches arranged in what looked like a nest. He had no doubt who had left them. The story of Miska, Tundra, and Echo became legend, a tale of love, loss, and the unbreakable bonds that can form between hearts, no matter the species. It reminded the world that family isn't defined by blood, and that love, in its purest form, knows no boundaries. In the stillness of the Alaskan forest, where snow falls softly and the wind sings through the pines, the spirit of a golden retriever lives on, in every rustle of leaves, every quiet chuff of a bear, and in every heart that dares to believe in the extraordinary power of love. For more of this type stories, please subscribe the channel and turn on notification all.